Fire wings or any kind of magic wing effect is an effect that has been used in many games as something that is part of the character, as an ability, or as a way of transforming or evolving the character into something majestic and really powerful. And since it has been requested quite a few times in the channel, that's what I'm going to show you today. I'm going to show you the steps I took to achieve this cool effect in Unity with shader graph, with a mesh data model in Blender, and a few particles. And as always, this project is available on my Patreon page. In case you are interested, I left a link in the description and you will get access to this entire project, as well as many other shaders and visual effects that you can use in your game. So, with that being said, let's see how we can do this. And this time I actually started by creating a few sketches so I could find a good shape for the wings. Once I had the sketch done, I moved on to Blender so I could start modeling the first pair of wings. It's nothing too fancy. I basically started with a plane with a mirror modifier and kept on modeling the backbone of the wings. Now the important thing for this tutorial are the wings themselves. And those I made with a plane, as you can see. They have only a few faces in the beginning and they have no thickness. They are really simple and flat, because we are going to use a shader with double-sided. The UVs are also very important for the shader to work well. So, since I only have a few quads and no triangles at all, I can use this simple trick where I select everything and with U I choose Light Map Pack. Then I select one face before selecting everything again and choose Follow Active Quads. I get these straight faces and this straight rectangle, which is great, and now I'm gonna make sure that the beginning of the feather is at the bottom of the UV area. And this is important because the rest of the feathers will have to follow this orientation. Otherwise, some of them will have the shader scrolling in the opposite direction. Now, since I was using image constraints, I could easily center this and fill the whole UV area. Next, with the live unwrap turned on, I can add a few more edge loops so the shader gets properly mapped to this object and it will have a better aspect in the end. And I proceeded to do the same for the remaining feathers, which is basically get the straight UV map, have the correct UV orientation so it matches the first feather, make sure the UV map fills the whole area and add a few more edges as well. Okay, so with the first prototype wings done, I exported this as an FBX and moved on to Unity. Here I have this guy, which has an animator. It has the character controller and a movement input script that enables me to move around in a third-person view. And in case you want to learn more about this setup, I made a tutorial a while back that will teach you how to set up the camera and the character controller as well. I left a link in the description in case you're interested. Now I'm gonna temporarily drag and drop these wings to my character so I can create the shader and see how it's behaving directly in the feathers. Okay, so I started by creating an unlit graph, and I am in a universal render pipeline, by the way, but this could be done with another render pipeline and with another shader as well. And the first thing I'm gonna do is add a color property defaulted to white and full opacity, since I know I'm gonna need this color, which is also going to be in HDR mode, by the way. Next, I needed a scroll mechanism so I can control the distortion speed, because basically we will have a main texture that is going to be animated by a distortion. And this is the scroll mechanism, a time node multiplied by a vector 2 connected to a tiling offset and now connected to a gradient, noise, or any other kind of noise. And I also added a distortion scale to control the size of the distortion. So like I said, it's going to distort a main texture, so I added a main texture. And now if I connected this directly to the UV of the sample texture, it would distort too much, which means I needed a lerp node to control the amount of distortion it will have. Right, and the A option of the lerp, it's going to be the UV without distortion. And the B option, it's going to be the UV totally distorted. And now I need the vector one to control the amount of the distortion. This amount right here. Cool. Next, so we can have a really cool effect, I also decided to add a dissolve effect to the main texture. And I used the Voronoi node for that, and I'm also going to use the same setup for the scroll mechanism. So I also added a vector 2 for the dissolve speed and a vector 1 for the dissolve scale. Right, now if I multiply the main texture directly with the Voronoi node, I get this more or less dissolved texture. Now a cool trick that we can do is use a power node. If I connect the Voronoi to a power, as you can see, if I start increasing the power value, we get this very dissolved texture in the right. So this time I'm actually going to use this to control the dissolve amount, which I think it gives a really cool effect. And it's enough, I don't need a lerp this time. Now the rest of the shader is really simple. All that was left to do was multiply the color with this output, and then in case I want to control this with a particle system, I can multiply this with a vertex color node, and then in the end all I gotta do is connect this to the color input and to the alpha. And just make sure that the alpha clip threshold is at 0, otherwise in case you are following this, you will have the end image really clipped. Another thing that is missing is setting the surface to transparent and the blend to additive for now. And I also turned on two-sided, so the wings can be visible from both sides. Now back to Unity, I created a material out of the new shader, and then I selected only the feathers so I could assign the material. Now all I had to do is play around with the values to get something pretty cool, like increasing just a little bit the distortion as well as the dissolve amount, and then adding a fiery orange, and also increase the intensity of the HDR color. And I quickly got this pretty cool effect going on. So it's all a matter of finding the right values and get something proportional as well with a good randomness. And at this point I was only using default particle texture. So if I started playing around with the texture, I can get really different feelings too. So that's what I did. I went to Photoshop and started painting these strokes that goes from thick to thin and start from the bottom to the top. And I had a problem with my recording, but basically after the first 4 or 5 big strokes, I added a few thin ones and started shaping them with the eraser tool. And I also added a few ones with very low opacity in the back and finished by increasing the white area at the bottom. And this is how it looked when I applied the text to the material. It's looking pretty cool, but I noticed that I needed something to contrast with. So I added a dark red in the back, after all, just like an initial sketch, more or less, at least the colors. And since the additive shader cannot reproduce dark colors, I had to modify the original one. So I duplicated first, And then all I needed to do is connect the alpha like this with a split node. And I also had to change the blend mode to alpha so I could use the dark colors. I created a new material out of this second shader and applied it to a few wings, adding a really nice contrast to the feathers. At the end, I decided to rig the wings instead of using vertex animation, which could also be done with vertex animation, but it would look very different. So basically I added the bones to the feathers, then I also created some inverse kinematics just to facilitate and speed up the animation process, and also corrected the weight. Now it was time to animate, so I created a very simple idle animation. After having quite a few problems importing the animations to Unity, I finally end up with this. The only thing that I added was a few more particles and a trail, and that's it. And I think it turned out pretty cool, even the blue one. This is open to a lot of possibilities and to a lot of uses, but that's mainly it. And I hope you have enjoyed this video and that you have learned something new. And all of this is available on my Patreon page, by the way. The entire project, as well as many other projects that I've shown on my channel. And I want to thank every patron that's supporting me. And a special thank you goes to the super mega patrons, which are Alejandro, FortHeroGames.com, Goblin Plague, James Finlay, James Ramsey, Jeff Cardenas, Ruan Mendiola, Ken Lee, Scott Wells Foster, Solofo Razafimaelio, Stephen Melton, Warden Studios, Artem Jim, and Chojiko Kaikai. And I'm sorry if I pronounced any of your names wrong. You guys are really awesome and your support is really very much appreciated. So that's it guys, thanks for watching, I hope you have enjoyed and see you in the next video.